I have always been a huge fan of Zootopia, which is why when I heard that there is more content coming out for it from Disney, I was understandably very excited. I soon learned that instead of a new sequel, it was instead going to be a short series on Disney Plus called Zootopia Plus. However, even when I went in knowing this, I was still really surprised by what this show really was. It didn't follow Nick and Judy, it didn't have an overarching plot, or even an overarching style, but was it bad? So let's go over every episode in the series and what I thought about it. The first episode is called Hop on Board, and it follows the parents after they drop Judy off at the train station. I definitely enjoy seeing more of Judy's parents because they are really cool characters that didn't get much screen time in the movie. The conflict of the story is pretty simple. One of the Hop's babies gets stuck on top of the train and the parents have to go save him.
Wiggle on, Stu! Throw me those keys!
Incoming, honey!
Immediately, the tone strikes me as really weird because this is an extremely deadly situation and the parents seem to kind of be joking around and they don't really care that much. I mean, I guess when you have this many kids, they are kind of disposable. They also keep doing this thing where they completely get distracted and start talking about their past, which feels like kind of exposition about the characters. It's really random, especially because in this situation, I don't think you would be randomly talking about your honeymoon. Along with this, the physics strike me as really unrealistic throughout the entire thing, which is strange because in Zootopia, it was kind of just meant to be a parallel to our world. It wasn't super toony or anything.
Baby.
Slow down, hon. We're just getting started.
Anyway, I really was not the biggest fan of this one. I know there's not really much you could have done with the parents since they really weren't in the first one that much, but this was really just not that good, especially because of how forced all the character stuff was. The next episode is titled The Real Rodents of Little Rodentia. It's a reality TV show parodying things like Jersey Shore or Real Housewives. Immediately what I noticed is the soundtrack actually does sound like those reality TV shows. It's super basic, it's kind of just like a background melody.
She said that? Oh, that no good. Oh, Squeak, I did promise her.
The conflict of this one is basically that Frou Frou doesn't want True True to be the shrew of honor at her wedding. But True True said that But Frou Frou promised True True that she would be the shrew of honor when they were very young. They were constantly doing these funny handheld camera things to make it look more like a reality TV show, and there's also these random guys holding microphones. I would be talking about the story, but not much happens in the story, kind of like an actual reality TV show. They do have this really awesome scene at the end where True True and Frou Frou make up and they talk about how they were friends since they were very young, and it turns out that the wedding dress True True had gotten Frou Frou was actually her mom's wedding dress, Frou Frou's mom's wedding dress. They also go shopping at one point and walk out into the crosswalk, and that's the same time when they're on the crosswalk that the donut almost hits her and Judy saves her life. So if you haven't figured it out already, all these shorts are extensions of stuff we've seen in the movie for a brief amount of time. So we get to see the backstory of these random side characters that were in the movie but weren't really crucial. And I think it does a good job at world building. I really like it. I don't believe this episode or the last episode was really the best example of this, but we are going to be seeing that in every episode of the series. Also, I almost forgot to mention, there's this really funny scene at the ending where she throws the bouquet behind her. You know, they do that at weddings, and the bouquet was actually night howlers, and they all go insane. I honestly think that was a really funny way to end it off, and not something I was expecting from Disney, because it isn't really a happy ending. They kind of just cut it off after they go crazy. Okay, next up we got Duke the Musical, which is about that weasel guy from the first movie named Duke. He was kind of like a petty criminal, and he got caught by Judy Hopps, and that's where this story gets picked off. He gets released, and he finds out that the entirety of the city is kind of making fun of him because he got caught by the first bunny police officer. And if you remember, everyone here is really racist, so you if you get caught by a bunny, you are less of a person because, as we all know, bunnies are the lowest life form. So, as the name implies, this one's a musical, so he's singing the song about how he wants to be better than just this petty theft who steals from old ladies and that type of thing. Off the bat, I want to say that I love Duke. He is a very cool character, and I always thought that he should have been more of a character in the first movie, or the movie. This isn't really the second movie, it's just a short. And I love the story they decided to do with him about him wanting to be more than what he was, because he's kind of just this movie pirating theft guy. Now I want to talk about the musical number itself, and first thing I want to do is talk about the cinematography. In this first scene here, we see a lot of really far away wide shots. This conveys that Duke is isolated and hopeless. We also see an interesting thing going on here with the lights. Duke is illuminated by the warm street lights, while the rest of the shot is extremely cool and dark. Not only does this make Duke feel more personal personal of a character, it also mimics the way real theatrical performances are done, where they use a spotlight to draw the audience's attention towards a specific character. Now I want to talk about the actual music itself. It basically follows Duke, who is like fantasizing about all these different ways he could make a ton of money, because he's like very motivated by money, if you can't tell. And they're not legit ways either. He's saying stuff like insurance fraud lawyer or a surgeon who sells people's organs. I'm not even joking, that's one of them. This is probably one of the funniest things in the entirety of Zootopia Plus. I'm really glad they went like full out and didn't like try to make it too like family friendly. Additionally, the visuals during this part are really surreal and super creative. And finally, I definitely need to talk about the ending. So earlier Duke stole some money from this old lady, and later he sees her crossing the road and he decides to pretend like she dropped her wallet and try to give the money back. But then out of nowhere she gets hit by a truck and a ton of money comes out, and last second he just makes a decision to grab the money. I know I've been saying this a lot, but absolutely not what I expected from Disney. Super funny, and an awesome conclusion to this like little short story we hear from Duke. Now let's take a look at The Godfather of the Bride. This one's pretty cool. It takes place at the shrew wedding thing from the movie, where they're eating the ice cream from like the tiny little thing, you know what I'm talking about. And the father, Mr. Big, I think his name is, he's telling a story about how they founded that little town, which he actually created. I didn't know if they mentioned that in the movie, but he created that little town that they run through. One thing I want to mention is every time it does these flashbacks, it heightens the aspect ratio to 16:9 as opposed to the 2.35:1 that it's usually been doing. You can't really tell because I have it cropped for copyright reasons, but I'll just show you examples right now. It also shows how he met the polar bears, which actually like worked for him for a really long time. And we see those guys in the movie, and I would always wonder like, you know, why are there polar bears here? I don't really get it. So that's actually explains that. It's pretty cool. There is like a kind of this bad guy character, but he's only really there to show that like they can all work together and beat the big bad guy. He doesn't really show up that much, honestly. I really can't say that much about this one because it's kind of just a lot of really short snippets about how they built the city in chronological order. What I can say though is I really like the way to present this. It's not just random exposition. He's like explaining this at a wedding, which is kind of like what you would do. It's a pretty natural way to show us this like background info. And I was always kind of under the impression that this guy did some illegal stuff to get all his money, but apparently he just like owned a bakery with his grandma, so that's kind of weird. There's honestly not really much I can say about this one, but I did really like it. I think it's a very realistic way to show this background info that we didn't know before, and I really like the aesthetics when they flash back and it shows Zootopia before it was all futuristic and cool. Next one is called So You Think You Can Prance, and this one's really weird. I'm just gonna say right off the bat, the whole thing's a dream. It all happens in Clawhauser's head as he fell asleep at the counter. They kind of present it in a way where it's like, is it a dream, is it a non-dream? But it's all a dream. It's shown very clearly at the end that it was all a dream. I do want to say that I love Clawhauser. I'm really, like, if he wasn't in this, I would be really mad. He's like my favorite character. So the plot is there's this talent show and Clawhauser wants to participate in this talent show because the winner gets the dance on stage with Gazelle. However, you have to have at least 2 people for some reason, so he tries to trick Chief Bogo into joining with him. And again, none of this is real, it's all a dream. So they're backstage, they put on these like goofy outfits to quote unquote go undercover. They look absolutely fabulous. They make use of purple lights in the lighting backstage, which is very interesting. You very rarely see that, and it honestly looks really good. Anyway, so Chief Bogo doesn't want to dance and Clawhauser has to go on stage by himself. He completely bombs it. I mean, this is some of the worst moves I've ever seen. Then of course the chief like rises from the ground to save him. And it's like he's really ripped and he's shirtless and it's dumb. But honestly, this is exactly how I would expect Clawhauser's dreams to be. So he wakes up after this and sprints into the chief's office. And this is the time where he catches him on the Gazelle app from the movie. And that's how this kind of works into the movie. There's really not much I can say about this one. Again, it's kind of all a dream. It doesn't really matter. It's not canon. Honestly, I wish we got to see something a little more story driven for Clawhauser. This is kind of just random nothingness. And it's made even more random nothingness-y by the fact that it didn't even happen. It just happened in his head. So yeah, this one was kind of a disappointment for me, but it was still kind of funny and had some good moments, so it wasn't terrible. The last one we have is called Dinner Rush, and I'm just gonna say right out of the gate here, this is probably my favorite one. In this one, we follow Sam the Otter, who is a server and has tickets to the new Gazelle show, and they have to finish their shift before the start of the show so they can get in. As you can imagine, something goes wrong, and that thing that goes wrong is that Sloth's rockin'. It's specifically Flash and Priscilla, I think her name is, and they're going so slow that it's like, oh no, they're never gonna make it to the concert. One thing about this episode that really kind of makes it my favorite is gonna be like the way they use anthropomorphic animals. The movie was always really good at making use of the fact that its world is full of animals. Too often, I see that media uses anthros just to make their characters more relatable and doesn't actually use the fact that they're anthros like at all in the actual story. A good example of this would be Sing. There's like no reason the characters in Sing are animals other than the fact that it's probably more marketable. And honestly, in a lot of other episodes of this series, they really didn't use the fact that there are animals that much. However, in this one, not only do we have the sloths being slow and actually being part of the plot, we also see a lot of cool visual gags, especially with these, giraffes that are like really tall and Sam has to use this like elevator thing to get up to them. There's also these like mice rodent things who are sitting in this tiny little hole in the tree, and it's very cute, especially seeing how they have to be served differently. The cinematography in this one also stands out. In this one part, we see the use of the vertigo effect to exaggerate the distance between Sam and the sloths, and to kind of show how it sets into Sam like how long this is really gonna take. They also keep going back to the static wide shot of Priscilla, Flash, and Sam in the middle, and the fact that it's so static and doesn't move and lingers forever really brings the audience into the experience of how monotonous this would be. I would also like to mention that our main character Sam is extremely emotive, not only with her face, which is very toony looking, but also with her body movements. The resolution of the conflict is that it turns out Priscilla and Flash are actually getting married, and they're going to the Gazelle concert, so they offer to take Sam with them in the car. And so that's how it attaches to the main movie. It's a scene at the end of the movie where they're speeding and they get pulled over by Nick and Judy. That's always been one of my favorite scenes in the first movie. It's hilarious, and it's a perfect way to end off this series. So there you have it. That was Zootopia Plus. It was not at all what I expected, but was it good? It wasn't bad, and honestly, if it was all the same quality as the last one, Dinner Rush, I would say it was very good, but there were some episodes where it kind of lacked in my opinion. I'm a bit disappointed with the Clawhauser episode, and the one with Judy's parents. They weren't really that good. I've heard a lot of people say that they're mad that Nick and Judy weren't really in this, and while I would really like to see more of them, I don't think that's a necessity. If they wanted to just do this side character thing, I think that's fine. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I wouldn't have preferred a Zootopia 2, but for just a short little anthology thing, I think this was fine, and I don't think we needed Nick and Judy. So that's all I really have to say about Zootopia Plus. Let me know what else you want me to review, and make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.